Lech-lech, go. From where? From your land, from your home, from your father's house, to where I'm going to show you, and I'm going to make you into a great nation. Rich, wealthy, successful. So now we have a rule. The Oznaim La Torah, Reb Zalman Sorotzkin, we have a rule, Masa Ovot Simon Labani. What happens to the Ovot, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, is often a sign for the children. That's why Sefer Bereshis is so important, because it teaches us insights of what we're going to experience. So the first thing he says is, Lech-lech, traveling. He says Jews throughout history have traveled from place to place. No matter where we get comfortable, we end up moving. They got comfortable in Spain, they got thrown out of Spain. They got comfortable in England, they got thrown out of England. They got comfortable in Germany, we know what happened in Germany. So, Lech-lech, there's always constant movement, Jews throughout history. And in some cases, even the final test of Avram, the Akedas Yitzchak, Jews give up their lives. We had concentration camps, there were pogroms, there were inquisitions, there were many, many examples throughout history of where Jews had to travel from place to place because they were expelled or they were thrown out, and where Jews were forced to give up their lives and risk their lives. So Lech-lech is a sign for the times, for the future. Where Moshe Feinstein, he says as follows. He says every day is Lech-lech. You get up in the morning, you have things to do. You go ahead and do them. You think you're doing your own schedule, you think you're following your own agenda. The truth is, everything that you're doing and everything that's going to happen to you is Lech-lech, is Hashem's will. So every day we have a Lech-lech. You get up and you're going to go. Some days you'll get a ticket, some days you won't, but it's all Hashem's will. It's all by what Hashem has in mind for you. It's all part of the Ratzon Hashem, the Lech-lech. Okay. The next thing is that it says that when Abraham left, who went with him? Lot. So it says in the Pasuk, Vayelech Avraham kashediber elav Hashem. Avraham went what Hashem intended for him, the mission. Vayelech ito Lot. So Zalman Sorotzkin says there's two ways to say with him. Ito and imo. Imo comes from the root word nation. Imo means we're together, we're partners. Lot, if he really went for all the right reasons, it would have gone with him, imo. Ito means that I'm going for my own agenda. You're going because Hashem wants you to go, promises you all these wonderful things, that's great. Why am I going? Because Avraham is 75 years old and he has no children. And I don't think he's ever going to have children. And he's a rich man and he's going to be very successful. And when he dies, who's going to take over and who's going to inherit everything? No one's going to be there. I'll be there. So you're going because you think Hashem is promising you all these great things. That's fantastic. I'm going to clean up after you're gone. So we're not going for the same reasons. I'm not going emo with you. I'm going ito, with my own agenda. Now, the Ramban has a fascinating question. The Ramban asks, by Noach, we have an introduction. That means we don't know who Noach is. We know that in the end of Bereshis, Hashem says, I regret making the world. And then we get a small insight, V'Noach motza chen b'nei Hashem. Noach found favor in Hashem's eyes. Then we're told, Eila told us Noach, Ish Tzadik, he was a righteous person. Tomim, he was whole. As Elokim is Halek Noach, he walked with Hashem. So we're given insights into Noach. If I ask you what kind of a guy was Noach, you'd say he was a very nice guy. If I ask you was he a tzaddik or a rasha, you would say he's a tzaddik. If I asked you did Hashem like him, you say Hashem loved him. We have information about Noach. Then we get to Avraham. And you know what? We have nothing. It doesn't tell me that Avraham was a Baal Chesed. It doesn't tell me that Avraham had an open household. It doesn't tell me that Avraham believed in Hashem. It doesn't say Avraham is a tzaddik. Nothing. It says that Terach lived 70 years. He had 3 children, Avram, Nochar, and Haran. These are the children of Terach, Avram, Nochar, Haran. Then it says Haran died. Then Avram and Nochar took wives. Avram's wife is Sarai, Nochor's wife is Milcah. Sarah had no children. Terach goes, they start working their way, they leave Ur Kasdim, they come to Haran, Terach dies. Then Hashem says to Avram, go to Eretz Canaan. So the Ramban says, how come we have no introduction? Tell me Avraham is a tzaddik. Tell me Avraham is a tomim. Tell me Avraham walks with Hashem. Tell me something. So the Ramban says that we only have one story with Avraham. He didn't know God. He began thinking the sun is God, the moon is God, this is God, that's God. Then he broke all the idols of his father's shop, because his father was an idol merchant, and he was arrested. Nimrod threw him into a fiery furnace, and he survived. So the Ramban says that in order to give an introduction to Avraham, I would have to tell the story. I would have to go into the whole idea of Avodah Zarah, worshiping idols, and how Avraham himself worshipped idols on his search for God. And he says the Torah didn't want to go into that. They wasn't interested in the background history of idol worship. So it just left it blank. And the whole story, this is a pretty famous story, Avraham being thrown into a fiery furnace, is left out. We're going to find out other reasons why it's left out in a moment, but for now it's left out. The Maharal goes a little bit different. The Maharal is more Kabbalistic. Sarah, there are two types of love. Did you know that? One love is called conditional. One love is unconditional. What would be a good example of conditional love?
Mother, children?
No, conditional.
Oh,
I love you if you give me an iPod. I love you if you give me a phone.
Bribery.
What?
Bribery.
That means I only love you because you give me things. The minute you stop giving me things, what's going to happen to that love?
I hate you.
I hate you. It's gone. That's called conditional. That's called conditional. Okay? That's called conditional love, right? It's an ava hatluya badover. It depends on things. There's another type of love called a ava that's unconditional, where someone loves you
No matter what.
no matter what.
Parents to kids.
Parents to children. That would be unconditional. Some principals to their students, some not. It depends. If you had a good principal, it would be unconditional love. Otherwise, not. I only love you if you get good grades and you behave in class. So the Maharal says as follows. If the Torah would have said, Hashem loved Avraham because Avraham did chesed, Avraham was willing to die for Hashem, it would give the impression that Hashem only loved Avraham because Avraham did certain things, conditional. And the Torah is introducing Avraham because that's going to be the father of us. So we might make the mistake to say, just like Hashem loved Avraham because Avraham was a good guy and did chesed and kindness, Hashem only loves us because we're good people who do chesed and kindness. We don't want that. We want Hashem's love for us to be unconditional. Even when I mess up, we want Hashem to say, I'm not happy with what you did, but I love you anyway. Okay? Do you understand that, Sarah? A person might say to you, Sarah, I love you anyway, but I'm taking away your cell phone. But I love you. And you might say, do me a favor, love me a little bit less, let me have my cell phone back. But that's a different story, but I understand that. Those are things you might say. So the Maharal says the Torah doesn't introduce Avraham to show you that the love is unconditional. It's not taluya badavar. Now, the same reason he says, they left out the story of the fiery furnace. Because I might say Hashem only loved Avraham because he was willing to die for him. So if I'm not willing to die for Hashem, Hashem doesn't love me, so it leaves out the story. That's what the Maharal says. The Meforshim go even a step further, and let's understand this a little bit more. There were 10 tests that Avraham was subjected to. The first test was the fiery furnace. The Rambam leaves it out, doesn't count it as one of the tests. You know why? Because the Rambam says Avraham was not Jewish. Does a non-Jew have to give up his life and not worship idols? No. No. If you go to a non-Jew and you hold a gun to his head and say, I want you to bow to the idol or I'm going to kill you. You know what a non-Jew is supposed to answer you?
Yes.
Bring me the idol, I'm bowing. Here I go, watch me bow. There's no sin for that. That means, Avraham, Nimrod said to Avraham, I don't like what you did with the idols. I want you to bow to the idols. Avraham said no, and he got thrown into the furnace. The Rambam says, that was a mistake.
He wasn't Jewish.
He wasn't Jewish.
But God helped him.
God what?
Helped him to survive.
1 second. That's it. We'll find out about that in a moment. But it's not a test. It's not a test if the answer is worship idols. That means if the answer was I'm not allowed to worship idols and now I'm risking my life, that's a test. So the big question is, why is it not listed? He gives a very simple answer. The Rambam says, because Avraham was wrong. He gave up his life. He was willing to give up his life for no good reason. And Haran died. Haran, his brother, died. So the Rambam has a different test instead of that one. But let's figure out first, I'm going to give you an answer. There's a different answer that we spoke about last week a little bit. But what are the 10 tests? Let's go through. Let's see how much you know from 3rd grade or 2nd grade when you study Parshas Lech-lech. 10 tests. What are they? Give me some of the tests. Let's go. The first test, the fiery furnace. Let's say, we'll agree for now, that's what Rashi says, the fiery furnace. That's what. What's test number 2?
To leave his father's house.
Lech-lech, going to a strange country. Great. What's test number 3?
Isaac.
No, so you're too far. Before that, when he gets to the land of Canaan, there's hunger, there's famine.
No.
So he has to leave. That's test number 3. Test number 4.
Wife.
Sarah taken in the house of Paro. Okay? That's test number 4. Test number 5.
Get married to
The 4 kings and the 5 kings.
Yeah.
The whole battle. Okay? Test number 6, the bris ben Absarim. Test number 7, that he had to do a bris milah. Test number 8, Avimelech took
Test
Sarah.
number 6 what? Bris what?
6, the bris ben Absarim. When he went into that dream and he was told that your children are going to go into Galut and everything else, that's what some people learn. Test number 7, he did the bris milah when he was 99 years old. Test number 8, when he went to the Plishtim, Avimelech took Sarah. Test number 9, when Yitzchak was born and Yishmael started up and he had to send Yishmael away, which wasn't very happy. And test number 10, Akedas Yitzchak. And some people say, if we don't count the first one, test number 10 would be when he came back from the Akedah, he heard that his wife had died. Mm-hmm. So here he had just gone through the Akedah and his wife had died. That was test number 10. So there are different opinions. What I told you last week a little bit, and we're going to go into it a little bit more, was something very fascinating. I told you that Rav Gedalia Shor, the Rosh Hashiva of Torah Vodaas, he wrote a sefer, Or Gedalyo, which is Machshava. Again, it's not Musar, it's Machshava. And I tried to show you this on the chart. You have Adam. You have 10 generations, you have Noah. You have 10 generations. Everybody thinks Avraham historically belongs here. Mm-hmm. He doesn't. He started his whole new line. Avraham saw himself as the new Adam Harisha. Mm-hmm. In the Gemara, when you refer to someone as a Ben Noach, he's a not Jew. He's a non-Jew. That's what the Gemara says. Even though we are all Ben Noachs, because Noach's son Shem, Avraham comes from Shem. No, we're not Ben Noachs. If you make a neder, I will not benefit from any Ben Noach, you cannot benefit from any non-Jew. You can benefit from a Jew.
Say it again.
If I make a promise, I swear, I will not shop by any Ben Noach store. Mm-hmm. Can I go into a Jewish store? Yes. Because a Jew is not a Ben Noach. Mm-hmm. So Avraham was of the philosophy that he was going to start the world over. He was going to reset the clock. He was going to be the new Adam Harishon. He was going to erase death from the world. He was going to put everything back like Gan Eden. That was his philosophy. Based on this, Avraham was then considered a Jew. That's what Ivri means. Ivri means the whole world is on one side, and I'm on the other side. That's why someone from this column cannot marry someone from this column. It's crossing the line.
Even he born not Jew, he's
Correct.
considered Jew.
That was
more
what
than
he,
the North.
that's what, in his conversations with Hashem, he was going to restart the world. Now, the one who believed the strongest in him was Esav. Esav went around very strongly believing in Avram, that Avram was going to reset the world, live forever.
Yeah.
When Avram died, Esav went crazy. And that's when he said, I'm going to die.
What's the reason?
15-year-olds don't talk that way. Today they do, but in those days they didn't talk that way. So, what do you mean he's going to die? I mean, why is he going to die? Because Avram died, the plan didn't work. Avram, they say, when Sarah died, he said, I can accomplish 50%. Ger v'toshov. I'm a stranger and I am a citizen. How can I be both? My neshama is a ger. My neshama is here for a short amount of time. After 120 years, my neshama goes back up to Shemayim. The neshama lives forever. So Avram accomplished 50%. The neshama lives forever. The body dies. Esav didn't believe that. He didn't accept that. He was born into this world. The body was everything. But that was Avram accomplished. So Rav Gedalia Shor says, if Avram was considered a new birth, when did he have his new birth? When he was thrown into the furnace. When he thrown into the furnace, it was like he died and came out. That's why it's not considered a test, or it is considered a test because he was Jewish, he had to give up his life. After that test, if someone converts, are you related to your non-Jewish relatives? No. Therefore, he wasn't related to his father. He could leave his father behind and he could go on. That's what it says.
After the fire, he became a Jew.
That's right.
It's like a
New
gift.
neshama.
It's a rebirth. Correct.
Like we do now to the mikveh. And
That is correct.
change.
Exactly what we do now to the mikvah, because the mikvah is supposed to symbolize the womb and the amniotic fluid, and you go in, you're back into the womb, and when you come out, it's like a rebirth.
Yeah, Abraham did the same to people too. To the mikvah.
That is correct. So, and that's what it says, that Avram went out and looked at the stars, and he looked at the stars, and he said to Hashem, according to the stars, I can't have children. What did Hashem say?
Wow.
Forget about the stars. Ein mazel Yisrael. There's no such thing as mazel to Israel. No, we're above that. So Avram didn't say, what do you mean, Yisrael? I'm not a Jew. I'm a Hebrew. I'm a Ben Noach. The answer was, no, you're not. You're a Jew. If he's Jewish, now if Nimrod says, worship idols or I'm going to kill you, what does he have to do? He let himself get killed. Therefore, that's why it was a test. So it comes out to be a very interesting progression, a little bit of what happened to Avram Avinu.
But Noah was a Jew. So why
Noah was a non-Jew. Noah was not a Jew. There was no concept of a Jew. Noah could have been. That means when the world got destroyed, Noah could have walked off the ark and said the same thing. New beginning, fresh start, let me reset the clock. What did he say? Let me plant some wine and let me get drunk.
Okay, we're going down.
celebrate?
We're going down. So we go up, we go down.
He went down. So Noah could have. Now it's interesting, because you have an interesting point. Adam was not a Jew. Noah was not a Jew, technically. We have children that we name Noah, and I know children named Noah, and there's people named Adam, very common Hebrew name. So even though they're Hebrew names, but they're not Jewish names. In theory, Moshe is not a Jewish name. Moshe is an Egyptian name.
Yeah.
In theory, right? In the Gemara, there's Rabbi Yishmael. Not the best name that I would mention,
Yeah,
I did a mortgage for a guy, an Israeli.
Ishmael was, no?
Yeah, I got an Israeli guy that I did a mortgage for. His first name was Nimrod. Not the best name, Nimrod. Nimrod was his name. Yeah, his name was Nimrod. I asked him how he got a name like Nimrod. Right? It sounds like not the name that you would pick,
The guy who threw him to the fire?
Yeah, throughout the fire. We're going to learn about him in a moment. Why would anybody name their kid Nimrod? He told me that his father or something was in a battle, And the area where the battle took place was Nimrod, or was called Nimrod. That was the nickname, and his father was saved. It was so he named his kid to remember the kindness that Hashem did by saving him. Okay? But, I don't think I would name a kid Esav. I've known people named Esav. My daughter had a babysitter, right? And her name was Vashti.
What the name?
Vashti.
Vashti?
No, Vashti.
На Пурим был из Вашти,
Vashti.
которая женщина.
Her name was Vashti.
Это она, девочка.
Я
ваша.
знаю, что
Yeah.
babysitter, of course.
Her husband's name was Haman. I mean, go figure. So there are very unusual names in the world. Very unusual
Your
names.
kids.
Yeah,
That's the
I had jury
this-
duty this
this
week.
name. Huh?
Remember I had jury duty, I told you? They threw me off. They weren't interested in me being on the jury.
Why?
Why? Look at me. Do you think you want me on the jury? They don't want rabbis on the jury. So I'm sitting there. They don't call my name. Of course, there's 600 people in the room. Half the people are being called up. At 12 o'clock, the lady comes over to me and says, if you want, you can go for lunch. I said, I thought lunch was at 1 o'clock. She says, okay, no one's calling you. You can go for 1. So I went from 12 o'clock. I went back home, went back to my office, came back at 2 o'clock, and I sat there at 2 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, she came over and she said, you know what? You're not going to get called. So here's a letter that you served your jury duty. Now you're free for the next 6 years. Have a nice day. I said, I can go home. I got to come back tomorrow? Nope.
And they didn't
back
say
when?
the reason, no?
Nope.
Just
I was the only white guy there anyway.
I did for 8 years, but I said I don't understand English.
Well, someone tried that. I was near the front. Someone said, I don't understand English, I don't speak English. So she says, are you a U.S. citizen? She said, yes. How did you become a U.S. citizen? I took a test. If you could pass the test, speak enough English. Go sit down.
They didn't say me this.
They did nothing. They didn't bother. No one got out of there. And me, she said, you know what? Go home. And I went home. That's it. I searched for 1 day.
They pay you $40?
Maybe. I didn't get a check yet. I think it's $40.
Yeah, $40 a day.
$40.
And you say Moshe name not Jewish?
Moshe is Egyptian.
Это же назвала
Who named him Moshe?
daughter of the farm.
Basparo. What does his mama name him? Avigdor, Stov, Ishocho. There was his mother gave him a whole bunch of names. But we call him Moshe. Why?
Water.
Because Moshe means to draw out. In what language? Egyptian.
Like sheep, yeah?
Yeah. Like sheep, like Moshe, Misa. So Moshe's name is, So there are a lot of interesting names. Ephraim and Menashe are Egyptian names to some degree. Okay, let's go next. We have a story in Parshas Lech-lech that nobody really understands why the story is here. Let me give you the overview of the story. You know the story. There were 4 kings. The main one of the 4 kings was a fellow named Kedar Omer. He owned a lot of the land in Canaan. And 5 kings lived in those lands. And to live in those lands, they had to pay rent. We call that tribute. And for years, for 12 years or something, they paid every single year. Shtei Mesrei Shana, for 12 years, they paid Kedar Omer taxes on clockwork. No missing it. Finally, in year 13, they rebelled. These 5 kings says, you know what? We're 5 kings. We're more than you. We're not paying you any more taxes. Okay. In year 14, Kedar Omer puts together an army and he attacks the 5 kings. There's a big war. And who are the 5 kings? Sodom, Amorah, Admah, Tzvoim, Bela, Tzoar. And there's a big war in Emek Hasidim. And what happens is the 5 kings lose. Kedala Omer wins. And he captures them. And he captures all their money. Who was captured? The king of Sodom. Who happens to be living in Sodom at that time? Lot. Okay. Now, there is a refugee. Someone escapes and comes running to Ephraim. We say that was Og. And he says to Ephraim, you should just know there was this big war, world war. Sodom lost. Lot was captured. Okay. What is Avram's obligation? First of all, what is Avram's obligation?
Same.
Why?
Because his nephew is.
Okay. So, according to the Torah, if a Jew is captured, does another Jew have an obligation to risk his life to free him from jail?
Yes.
No. No, believe it or not. Because why should I die to save you? Meaning, if it's only money they want, I can raise money to try to redeem you. But I'm not obligated to go to war to save you.
To risk his life.
To risk your life. We don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't do that. And Avram kept the Torah. The Gemara goes through such detail how Avram kept Shabbos, he kept Yontav, he kept Sukkah, he kept Luvah, he kept Erev Chatzeros, he kept even the Rabbanon. Avram is a Torah Jew. So why would he risk his life to save Lot? I understand he's a relative. Maybe he would have bought his freedom, but he wouldn't have gone to war. Number one. Number two, Avram should have said, Lot's problems are whose problems? Lot's problems. Who told him to go to Sodom? I begged him not to go. That means he caused his own problem. It means it wasn't because I drove him to Sodom. He drove himself. Okay. And then, so Avram goes to war, and there is a war, and Avram is successful, and he frees these 5 kings. And the king of Sodom says, do me a favor, just give me back the people, let me keep the money. And Avram says, you know what, I don't want anything. I don't want your people, I don't want your money. And Hashem says, what, the people? Make them Jewish. Avram didn't even want to make them Jewish. And eventually, what happens to these 5 cities? They're all going to get destroyed anyway. Nothing's going to remain. Why do we have this story? What does this story teach me? If it teaches me that the Torah says, don't risk your life, and Avram didn't keep the Torah over here, that's not a very good lesson to learn. If it's a story of 4 kings and 5 kings, what do I care? And if the 5 kings are special, they're not special. They're horrible. Nobody wants them. We don't want their money, we don't want it. So what do we learn from all this? To make things matters worse, the story begins that it was during the days of Amraphel. So Rashi says, who is Amraphel? What's the answer? Nimrod. So Rashi says, why was he called Amraphel? So the Gemara is an Erev. The Gemara says, Amraphel, the guy who throws people into the fiery furnace. That's what Amraphel means. She'amar la Avraham pol, jump in, the tokif shana'esh. So, I don't get it. It says it was during the days of Amraphel. If his name is Nimrod, the Torah should have said it was in the days of Nimrod. Nimrod's name is in the Torah, right? So, right, Nimrod. No, Amraphel. Maybe the guy's name was really Amraphel. What's your name? My name is Ephraim. Nah, your name is Moshe. You're only called Ephraim because it comes from the word Ophar, because you like to dig in dirt when you were a kid. It doesn't make any sense. If his name is Nimrod, write Nimrod. If his name is Amraphel, maybe that was his name, maybe it wasn't Nimrod. Number one. Number two, everybody wants to know, what's Nimrod doing here? Here is Canaan. Nimrod is in Babylon. Babylon is about 600 miles away. Has nothing to do with Israel. Nothing. Why would these kings include Nimrod, who's all the way over in Iraq or Iran, in their problem? It's like we in the United States have a problem, so we're going to bring in an army from Venezuela.
Cuba.
Or from Cuba. Cuba's 90 miles, it's close.
Oh, close.
We're going to bring in an army from Brazil. Why would they do it? What does Brazil have to do with the United States? Nothing. Even Canada has nothing to do with the United States. And Mexico, we want to bring them in. We want to build a wall and keep them out. So what difference does it make? So, everybody wants to know, what's Nimrod doing here? So the Oznaim LaTorah says that Nimrod is mentioned because he was very important, he was a big soldier, a big fighter, and maybe there were 5 kings on this side, and there were really only 3 kings here. So they needed some help. Maybe they needed an ally. So they brought Nimrod in because Nimrod was very strong. Okay? But we still don't know why the Torah says this story. So they give a fascinating answer. Listen to the Medrash. The Medrash gives a fascinating answer. The Medrash says Nimrod wasn't involved. He could care less. But Nimrod had one person in the world he hated with all his heart. Who was that? Avraham. It says over here in the Sefer Be'er Vasodeh that it says over here that Alpha Pikein, who hates Osam, he was able to entice Nimrod to join them. Ki hu hoya Nimrod, this was the Nimrod, shehoya sona la Avram, he hated Avram, mi'oshanola, from the day that he was born. You have to remember, Nimrod said he was a god, and he was the absolute ruler. Only one person beat him, Avram, and he never forgot it. So all of a sudden, Nimrod hears there's this big world war going on in Canaan, and it involves Sodom. Then he gets a message. Guess who we got? We got Lot. So Nimrod says, okay guys, I'm in. Do me a favor, don't touch that Lot. Lot looked like Avram. He's mine. Remember, Lot's father, Haran, he successfully killed. Lot's mine. Then Nimrod sends a message to Avraham. We got Lot. What are you going to do about it? It was a setup. It's called bait. Okay? Bait. Avraham realizes that this war is not about taxes and not about paying homage. It's not about anything but one thing.
Revenge.
Revenge. Lot is the pawn. He's the trap. He's the bait. It's Nimrod looking for an excuse to fight. No matter what I do, I lose. If I don't fight, you know what Nimrod's going to say? He's a chicken. He's a coward. He's no God. He doesn't have God on his side. How did he win last time? He did magic. Kishuv. He was just magical tricks.
He lost.
He lost. If I do fight him and I lose, I lose. My only choice is to fight him. I have to find a way to fight him and to win. I gotta get Lot back, even though I don't want Lot. Avram doesn't want Lot. Does Avram even say to the king of Sodom? The king of Sodom says, take the money and give me back the people. Avram could have said, okay, I'll give you back the people, but I want Lot. Did Avram say that?
No.
What did Avram say? I don't want anybody. I don't want anything. Keep Lot, keep the people. He didn't even ask for Lot back. There's only one thing he wanted. He had to fight because it was a battle about whose God is more powerful, Hashem or Nimrod. It's the only reason he went. Had nothing to do with anything else. In the end, he beat Nimrod a second time. Now Nimrod was for sure gunning for him. Someone had to step in and remove the Nimrod threat from Avraham. Guess who did that? Not O. Who killed Nimrod? Nimrod died. Nimrod was killed. Guess who stepped in?
Eliyahu.
No, but you're close.
Elazar.
Esau.
Oh, Esau.
Esau.
Oh, yeah, Esau killed him. Yeah,
Esau killed him.
yeah, you take it from
took
his
his
jacket.
coat.
Yeah, coat.
That's right. Took his coat.
Yeah.
Esau said,
Yeah.
this guy is still hunting my grandfather. Remember, I told you, who loved Avraham like a son? Esau. Esau and Avraham, they were inseparable. So in the end, who did Esau blame for causing his grandfather trouble? Nimrod. Esau took care of that. So we say Esau is a murderer. That's one of the averos he did. He murdered. But nobody ever asked, and who was the guy he murdered? It was Nimrod. Now he's not such a bad murderer anymore. Now he's not such a bad guy.
After Avram passed away, or
Yeah,
It was after Avram passed away. I think Avram did not want anything done while he was alive, but after he passed away, Esau took care of Nimrod. Okay? So here's the Esau, the bad guy, the murderer, and now you say to yourself, hey, not so bad. No, hold on here. No, let's not jump the gun. The Ramban says something very interesting. The Ramban says these 4 kings represent the 4 exiles. Very interesting. First of all, the first guy, right, was Amraphel Melech Shinar. Shinar was Bavel. That's Nebuchadnezzar, Kolos Bavel. Then he says, the next guy, Eleazar, is one of the Persian cities. That's Persia. That's the story of Porus. That's the story of Purim. Okay? Then he says, Kedala Omer Melech Elam. Elam was a Greek city. That's Yavan. And Sidal Melech Goyim, of the nations in general, he says that's Edom. That's Rome. So he says that these 4 kings represented the 4 battles that we would have to fight historically. And Avraham fought them and defeated them as a sign, Maaseh Avot Siman Labonim, that we will one day fight them and destroy them as well. So the Ramban writes that this is to show you that there will be 4 kings that rule the world that will make the Jews suffer, and Avram's destroying them is destroying all 4 kings. So I found that to be very, very interesting. Let's go a little bit further over here. We have we're okay. We might even finish early. Then the story goes on. Okay, so now we took care of the 4 kings, the 5 kings. We have this whole story in here which really doesn't make a difference. Okay. It says that afterwards Hashem appears to Avram. Avram says, what are you going to give me? I have no children. He says, the only one that I have that is like a child to me is my student Eliezer. So Hashem says, no. Go outside, look at the stars. You can't count the stars. That's what you're going to have children. And he goes through the Bris Ben Absarim. He cuts all the different animals in half, and he's put to sleep, and he has this whole dream. Okay. Comes after that, and then they have no children. Avram has promised children. So it looks like Avram panics. He should have waited. Hashem promised him children. So what does he do? He says to Sarah, we don't have children. So Sarah says, why don't you marry Hagar? She's my maidservant. She'll have children. I'll raise the child. And we will have children from her. Now you have to understand, in those days, that's how it was very often. Men had more than one wife. One wife was for having children, and one wife was for not having children. She was called a trophy wife. She was the one that he went to all the parties with, while the other wife stayed home and took care of the children. Right? Do we have that today?
No.
Remember that.
Some people.
Remember that. What?
Rich people.
Some people have that, and those are people who are in trouble. Yeah. Okay, those are people who are going to get themselves in trouble. They won't last long. Don't think you're going to get away with it. You're not going to get away with it. There's always something. There's always something.
That's not good.
Yaakov had 4 wives.
What? Yeah, Yaakov had 4 wives, and they didn't last that long either. Okay. So at any rate, so what does it say? Hagar becomes pregnant. So it says that Vatahar, she became pregnant right away. And then the Torah says, Vatekal gevirta be'einah. Hagar complained that Sarah was abusing her, mistreating her. And Sarah says to Avram, what are you talking about? I gave you my servant, she became pregnant, now she's the one that's rebelling, not me. Hashem should judge between the two of us. And in the end, Hagar can't take it anymore and she runs away. Bless you. Who sees her? The Malach. And the Malach says, go back. So the Ramban says, how is it possible that Sarah, who is really a very kind, generous person, just because Hagar became pregnant so quickly, which was the plan anyway, would mistreat Hagar? So the Ramban takes a very hard line. He says Sarah was wrong. And because she mistreated Hagar,
That's ever so.
Hagar's children would mistreat us till the end of time. That's a pretty scary Ramban. That to say that the Arab population mistreats Jews because of the fact that Hagar mistreated, that Sarah mistreated Hagar is a very, very difficult Ramban. There was an incident today in Israel. Did you hear? The Arabs dug another tunnel. And this tunnel went to one of the neighborhoods, one of the Jewish neighborhoods. And they could have attacked that Moshav. So the Israelis destroyed the tunnel. But there was a bunch of Arab terrorists, I guess, in the tunnel when they destroyed it. Like 14 of them were killed. 14 Arab terrorists were killed because they were ready to strike. Would have been a horrible. How they found the tunnel, I don't know. I haven't seen the news. I just saw a blurb about it. So we're going to see what's going to happen. I have to read about it and see what's going to happen. Anyway, if it's true that Sarah mistreated Hagar, so why would the Malach, the angel, send her back to be mistreated? We don't believe in that. So Rabbi Ari Levine said something very fascinating. Rabbi Ari Levine says that Sarah did not treat Hagar any differently than the way she was treated the whole time. So what was she complaining about? Sarah didn't change. Hagar changed. Hagar felt that now that I'm pregnant, leave me alone. I'm not going to do the dishes. I'm not going to wash the floor. I'm going to stay in bed all day, and I'm a princess now.
I'm a wife of Avraham.
I'm a wife of Avraham. I'm a princess. Leave me alone. So Rabbi Ari Levine says Sarah acted no different in her treatment of Hagar. Hagar wanted special treatment. She wanted less duties. That didn't happen. Okay? So, again, it's not because, we interpret the Torah where it says that she felt mistreated by Sarah. But there's always two sides to a story, Someone comes in and says, I'm being mistreated. And then you find out the other story that the person's not doing is lazy all day. A kid comes and says, my parents mistreat me. I find out that the kid sleeps until 4 o'clock in the afternoon and then goes out and stays out till 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, and is smoking drugs and cigarettes and everything else. So, of course, you hear one side of the story, you don't get the picture. The Be'er Moshe says something very interesting. The Be'er Moshe says, why did Sarah act this way? Why did she remain strong? Why didn't she give in and treat her a little bit softer? She says, again, Ma'aseh avot siman labanim. Sarah wanted us to know that when you deal sometimes with the enemy, you can't give in. Because they don't respect that. That's a sign of weakness. And she understood that Jews and Arabs would be a constant battle to the end of time. And therefore, you have to understand that when you deal with, that's why we don't negotiate with terrorists. There's no negotiating with terrorists. Because if they win, they'll do it again. The same thing with the airplane hijacking. It never was that way. Who started the airplane hijacking? The Arabs, the Islamic, again, think about all the terrorist activities. And the word, Israel doesn't do terrorist activities. Not a bunch of Hasidic Jews that are terrorists. It's not happening. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but these are things that are made to understand. Okay, he brings out a story here. Have you ever heard of the Boston Rebbe? The Boston Rebbe, okay. The Rebbe in Boston, he was Reb Levi Yitzchak Horowitz. Now, it's very interesting. His father, Reb Pinchas David, started a Hasidic sect in the city of Boston. Now, most Hasidim come from Europe. Yeah. Lubavitch came from the town of Lubavitch. Ger came from Ger. Bovov came from Bovov. We have from all over Europe, and they come out to America, and they restarted after World War II. Boston is not the type of a city. New York has Hasidic Jews. Boston really didn't have it.
Small town.
It's a small town. Not such a small town. It's a very famous town. But, the Reb Levi Yitzchak, who was the Boston Rebbe, was very successful in Boston. And he dealt a lot with students at MIT and Harvard and Princeton and Yale. That's the big colleges. Yeah, the big Brown University, which is in Providence. These are the big colleges. And he went out to the campuses. Anyway, believe it or not, when he was growing up, he was a student in Torah Vodaas in Williamsburg, in a regular Ashkenazi yeshiva. And the yeshivas back in the 30s and 40s, In the summer, they went to the mountains, to the Catskills, like they do today. And he went to the Catskills under the leadership of Rav Shraga Feivel Mendelovich, and he was in Camp Torah Vodas. Well, one day in camp, they're going to have a baseball game. Now here's this Hasidic boy who grew up in Boston, has pace and everything else, and he never played baseball in his life. He never even saw a baseball game in his life. So they got to figure out where to put him. So they looked to figure out which area of the team has no activity. Almost balls never go to. Right field. That's what it is. A lot of people hit on the infield, so you need first base, second base, third base, pitcher, and catcher, we know. Left field is very popular. Center field. Right field, very often no balls go. So they put him in right field. Of course, they gave him a glove. He didn't even know what to do with his glove. So he's sitting there in right field, and he's the first time he played baseball in his life. And as luck would have it, a ball came to right field. And he didn't know what to do with it, how to catch it, whatever it is. He lasted maybe an inning or 2 innings. That was his whole experience with baseball. And he forgot about it. One day, he's in this campus, on one of the campuses, and he's trying to bring kids closer to Judaism, Jewish kids. So there's a Jewish kid who's getting into his car. So the Rebbe says, could you give me a ride? I don't have a ride, and I don't want to take the bus. Could you give me a ride? He says, no problem, Rabbi, I'll give you a ride. And he has this rock music on. So the Rebbe says, I really don't want to listen to the rock music. Is there anything else that you have that I can listen to? He says, let me see. He says, there's a baseball game on, the Boston Red Sox. Okay, so they're listening to the Boston Red Sox. All of a sudden, on the radio, it says, so-and-so who's up to bat hits a long drive to right field. So the Rebbe says, right field, that's my position. So all of a sudden, the guy who's driving the car stops and looks at him and says, what are you talking about? Right field is your position. He says, well, when I play baseball, I play right field. He says, you don't play baseball? He says, sure, in camp I used to play baseball all the time. I was in right field. And they have this whole conversation about right field and left field and everything else. When you're trying to bring the Jew back, sometimes just having a conversation about simple things
in his level, yeah.
On his level creates a connection. And he brought the kid back. He built a connection, they became friends, and eventually the kid became Shomer Shabbos, came through. So he says, sometimes a home run can actually become a run back home. That's what he said already. Wow. That means sometimes a home run can be a run back home. And it was like the Avraham Avinu, the Avraham Avinu of what's it all about, as far as, being able to accomplish things and stuff like that. We see from here just the whole story of the Hasidic Rebbe, where he's able to bring people back, which was really, really amazing that he was able to do that. So I found that to be a very, very fascinating story, how everything that happens, for whatever the reason, always happens for a purpose. I mean, there's always a reason why something happens. This doesn't happen like that. It happens for a reason, and he believed that that's why, he had it. And of course, there was Reb Noach Weinberg, who did a lot of kiruv, and there were a lot of people who lately did a lot of kiruv, brought a lot of people back. Years ago, it wasn't that way. When you go back 100 years, there weren't that many kiruv yeshivas. And lately, more and more people are coming back. It's just an interesting thing. Okay, it's already 9:25, 9:26. Next week, Parshas Vayera. We're going to find out. When Avram went to the Akedah, right? He took Yitzchak. Who went with him, by the way? Yishmael and Elazar, right? Eliezer and Avram. Eliezer was there, I understand that. What was Yishmael doing there? He had sent Yishmael away. That means if you think about it, how old was Yishmael when Avram sent him away? He was 13. He was 15. Because Yitzchak was 2. How old was Yitzchak at the Akedah? 37. So for the last 35 years, where was Yishmael?
Away.
Away!
Yeah.
Well, he came home for a visit. That means all of a sudden we're reading, oh, Hashem says to Avraham, bring your son, your favorite, and take him. He says, okay, Eliezer, Ishmael, let's go. What? Eliezer, I got it. Ishmael?
Where you come from?
Where, he's gone. 35 years he hasn't been home. What's he doing there?
Next week.
Next week.
That's right. That's right.